brilliant.
Change doesn't happen overnight. Everyone who's worked in a school knows this. They also know that wholesale change, hastily implemented, very often fails before it has the chance to succeed. So how do we take the exciting, potentially transformational ideas from this course and start to roll them out gradually, in a way that is both achievable and sustainable?
One of the powerful pieces of work I feel we've been doing, and I've kind of left you all to it, so we met with everyone and we set up our triads to actually for you to go and observe colleagues. The first advice I would give is the head teacher needs to be absolutely on board and committed to the process. There are lots of things that we do as leaders in schools where we delegate, we distribute leadership. This is one for me that the head teacher has to absolutely really drive forward, not do everything, but drive forward in terms of showing the commitment to. If the head teacher, and it starts from there, that immediately says to the teaching assistants, you're really valued. The other advice I would give in terms of getting started on bringing about change is listen to other people. So I immediately talked to others. I talked to the leadership team. I talked then to the teaching assistants themselves, and we began to explore. And then really the biggest advice is a development team that is actually on the ground, people who will make the difference. So it's really gain the commitment first through a compelling vision that comes from the head teacher and the leadership team, but very quickly becomes a mindset and culture, because I think that's a lot of the actions we might put in place are actually only going to really be maximised and taken advantage of if we put that within the right culture.
Do you want them to stick it in?
Yeah, they can do, yeah.
Because they're wasting time sticking in them.
That's all right, it's fine.
What advice would you give to a senior leader who wanted to start making changes that made it easier for teachers and TAs to work together effectively?
A lot of it's to do with time and planning that time to have the discussions. I think, again, we talk about that intimate team, that close working relationship. I think probably matching the pair is very important, but I also think that if once that relationship's established, allowing them to have that flexibility and to have the opportunity to talk to one another, share the planning first thing in the morning so that they've got the time to discuss and make clear what the expectations are from the teacher for the TA, but also for the TA for the teacher. You know, make sure that they understand what you're asking and and vice versa. And once that's happened, you can then be as prepared as possible for the rest of the week.
If you were going to give advice to a head teacher, what would you tell them to do, or what would you suggest to improve the role of TAs in the school?
I just said being involved in PPA time, being involved in the planning, receiving the planning in advance, so it gives you a clear view of what's coming up in the following week. We have smart time at the end of the day, which is literally just a 10-minute debriefing, and it's just to look at what we've done throughout the day, what went well, what could we tweak for tomorrow's session. But again, like, TAs need to be involved in planning. That's a big one. Yeah.
After all the work you've done looking at TAs, looking at being part of the DIS project, producing this guidance, what would you say is the most important piece of advice that you could give to a senior leader looking to make changes in their school?
I would say use the recommendations in a way that works for you, to own them as best you can, and to also really go for it. I think where we've seen it work most successfully is with school leaders who haven't cherry picked. They've really kind of rolled their sleeves up and had a deep engagement with the issues and really thought through how they're going to make improvements. The leadership point is perhaps one of the most fundamental to the success of this. Really, we've seen it work best where head teachers lead the change, own the recommendations, make them their own, and in a sense develop them as well.
Diane, what advice would you give to a head teacher who came across these recommendations for the very first time?
I would say take them and read them, give a copy to every member of staff and encourage them to read them, give a copy to the governors and enable them to read them, and then use them as a lever to make the changes in school. So use them to have a good look at your current practice. Use them to create a really strong and compelling vision for how you want your school to be, and then allocate the resource and the strategy to make it happen. This is really important. This is a huge resource invested in children, so we need to make sure that we get the best out of that resource and take time to lead on this initiative, give people time to look at the recommendations, consider them, implement them over time and constantly review practice. If the one thing that you're going to do, even if the school has other priorities, look at those other priorities in light of these recommendations as well. It's too important not to.